We do continue to follow the breaking news. A verdict has been reached in the trial of the man accused of planning and plotting to assassinate then candidate Donald Trump. Ryan Routh facing 5 federal counts. We have just confirmed he has been found guilty of all 5 counts. I'd like to bring in former federal prosecutor David Weinstein, who joins us on the phone with this to cover this breaking news. All right, so David, we're just learning this actual verdict: guilty on all 5 counts: attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate, possession of a firearm in the furtherance of a crime of violence, assaulting a federal officer, felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition, as well as possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Guilty on all 5 counts. My question for you: this jury only deliberating really for a few hours. Are you at all surprised at how quickly this happened?
I'm not, Nichole. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that it didn't happen a little quicker, given the fact that he represented himself, encountered a large number of difficulties during the course of the trial, and the fact that the evidence was circumstantial but overwhelming. I'm not surprised it was this quick. While I was waiting over the break there, I was thinking to myself, who is the holdout? And certainly it was someone, based on the question the jury had, who had a question about whether the gun was operable. So that meant that his expert got to somebody, but that quickly resolved itself. A not guilty verdict wouldn't have been this quick. It would have taken a lot longer.
You know, and David, as you just said right there, Routh opted to represent himself. He did not have a lawyer. He also does not have any legal background. He has no legal training. Talk about some of the issues that caused with the judge. He was reprimanded several times.
Well, the problem is that he can't have it both ways. He either has to have representation or represent himself. And if he agreed to represent himself, then he has to abide by the rules that he's just not familiar with. And so the judge needs to make sure that the record is what it should be, and that evidence comes in properly, and that when he's defending himself, he has to follow the confines of these rules. A couple of examples of that came up during his closing. From what I heard, he was trying to introduce new evidence, trying to testify, things that we anticipated would be an issue, and she had to shut him down. It may have worked in his favor a little bit, seeing how hard she was on him. Perhaps that is what made one of the jurors think the way that they did, at least for a little while. But there are rules in the courtroom, and whether you're representing yourself or whether you're a lawyer, you have to follow those rules.
You know, and as you've experienced in your career, from what you have seen, how successful are defendants who opt to represent themselves? How successful do they tend to be?
So it's not a perfect record for the prosecution on these cases. There are individuals who represent themselves, even if they're not lawyers, who actually strike a chord with jurors and who come away with a not guilty verdict, at least on some of the counts, or a hung jury. There's also a number of individuals with no legal training who do well on appeals and are able to use the library. So it's not a perfect record for the prosecution, but it's very difficult. I'd say the percentages, based on my experience, are literally less than 5%, maybe 2 or 3%.
You know, and David, Routh opted not to take the stand in his own defense. What are your thoughts? Do you think that was a wise move from somebody who, again, has no legal background?
I'm not sure if the verdict would have been any differently. I think the problem he was going to encounter was that he was going to try and present his defense by way of a rambling monologue. And I think, having seen the way that objections were sustained with how he was presenting himself, it would have just been frustrating. And I think it was something that could have potentially blown up in his face and made this verdict even quicker than the almost 2 hours it took them.
And last question for you, David. Again, he was found guilty on all 5 counts, all of the 5 charges he was facing. Do you expect an appeal?
He's entitled to an appeal. Any defendant is entitled to an appeal on an adverse verdict. Now, whether or not he's going to be successful, that's going to depend on whether he accepts finally the assistance of an appellate lawyer. Because as difficult as it was for him in the trial court, it's going to be 2 or 3 times harder when he's dealing with the Court of Appeals.
Former federal prosecutor David Weinstein, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this breaking news.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.